Well, that's not the game you wanted from the Cardinals bullpen. What's going on, everyone, and welcome in to this edition of B-Shafe Daily. Brenden Schaeffer here with you in what is now the early morning hours of Thursday, July 4th, 2024. Happy Independence Day, everybody. Happy July 4th. Let's go ahead and get into some Cardinals talk without much of a preamble because it is late. The Cardinals do play a pre-noon game on Thursday, so we might as well jump in and give folks as much time as possible to listen to this episode. I'm going to be a little bit unkind to some Cardinals fans because I find some of the reaction to this game to be a little bit over the top, and that's not just because I received probably the most unhinged DM of my life on Twitter tonight. I did share it publicly in a response to my buddy Caleb Noble, but I don't think I'm going to try to call more attention to the tweet than I already have. But nevertheless, people are freaking out a little bit after this 5-4 loss by the Cardinals against the Pirates in extra innings, and I understand why. This was a game in which the bullpen blew it, and for as much as we do hear complaints about the way the bullpen has been managed this season, the bullpen really hasn't blown too many games in the way that it happened on Wednesday night, but it did happen, and so we got to talk about it. Did Oli Marmol make mistakes in the way that he managed the bullpen? Because there in the 10th inning, you had Andrew Kittredge, and then after he walked a batter, JoJo Romero comes in, doesn't record an out, gives up a couple of hits, and the Pirates walk it off in 10. A lot of disappointment there for Cardinals fans, understandably so. But is this a game where you look at it and say, oh, Oli Marmol absolutely blew it? For me, I have to say not necessarily, and that's going to rub some people the wrong way. I'm used to it. Again, I already got the angry DMs, so nothing you guys can say in the YouTube comments is going to hurt my soul to that extent. But if you want to let your comments be known, absolutely do so. Get them in on your disappointment from this game, because this was a game that it felt like the Cardinals were going to lose. And then when Willson Contreras hit that home run to make it 3-3, I thought maybe this is one that the Cardinals are going to be able to steal. And then you go up 4-3, and you figure, okay, time to lock this thing down. Obviously, the Pirates do get the Manfred man. They get the automatic runner on second in the same way that the Cardinals did in the top of the 10th inning. But this is a great opportunity to steal a game, to guarantee a series win. All of the arrows pointing in a very positive direction for the Cardinals. And they leave in Andrew Kittredge, which I was a little bit surprised by. And I understand he's not really the guy that blew the game, because it was JoJo Romero on the mound when this thing truly ended up going the wrong direction. But one out recorded, one walk allowed by Kittredge in that 10th inning, but it was after he had already pitched in the 9th. And that was what was surprising about it to me, is maybe Oli Marmol pushing his luck a little bit in terms of trying to extend Andrew Kittredge beyond the 9th inning that he had pitched, which was passable, right? Was able to get out of that 9th inning without giving up anything of substance. And then all the damage ends up coming against Kittredge and the Cardinals in the 10th, as JoJo Romero gives up the 2 inherited runs. He gives up a couple of base hits, and it was all she wrote for the Cardinals. Kittredge and Romero have not been quite as sharp in recent weeks. We all are aware of that. But is there anything that Oli Marmol can do about it, or that he should have done about it in the game on Wednesday? I'm not entirely sure that's the case, and part of the reason for that is, well, exactly the way that he explained how things went down after the game in the visiting clubhouse on Wednesday night. So I want to play a little bit of audio from Bally Sports Midwest, because if you were thinking, how in the world does Oli Marmol not go to Ryan Helsley or even Ryan Fernandez in that 10th inning? Well, there is an answer to that, courtesy of Bally Sports Midwest.
Yeah, that's his matchup there. Reynolds is better from the left side. You definitely want a lefty on Cruz there. We got a couple guys down that have pitched a lot. We're going to have to figure out a way to win without them from time to time. Fernandez down. You got Helsley also down. So you mix and match as good as you can going to the end of that game there. Guys did a nice job of getting their lanes, but a couple good swings off of JoJo there. Game over.
And that was Oli Marmol talking about after the game, answering a question, I presume, as to what the thought process was behind JoJo Romero coming into that spot. And again, he looks at the data on it and says that is a spot for JoJo, because Bryan Reynolds, who is a switch hitter, is the guy that you would rather see in terms of the matchup for the Cardinals from their perspective, you'd rather see Bryan Reynolds batting from the right side against a left-handed pitcher. You look at the splits this season for Reynolds, a 739 OPS against lefties, batting as a righty, which is the situation that the Cardinals set up by bringing JoJo into that game. When he is facing right-handed pitching as a left-handed batter, Bryan Reynolds has an 823 OPS this season. Not quite 100 points higher, but 80 or so points higher. So that's a matchup that makes sense there. And with O'Neal Cruz, the lefty on deck, it just made sense for JoJo to come into that spot to try to get a couple of guys. Again, I don't know about the idea of having Kittredge come in for the beginning of that 10th inning. He did record an out. He also walked a man, and that is what led to JoJo Romero coming into the game. I was thinking as it was happening, man, a little bit surprised, no Fernandez, no Helsley, but these are guys that have been heavily worked so far this season, and that's where I kind of get into my angst, I suppose, about the way that this scheme is being reacted to by Cardinals fans. Fans who think that Oli Marmol is unilaterally in charge of whether Helsley on a given night is available to come into a game or not might be some of the dumbest people on this planet. Might be a little harsh for me to say that, but I am so frustrated, beyond frustrated, with some of the commentary that I see out there that absolutely ignores what's really going on here. There are people out there who really do believe, and I see the commentary, and maybe tell me if I'm getting too caught up on Twitter. You can literally comment right now and say, Brenden, hey, bud, next time, just don't even spend very much time talking about these narratives. It's just a few people on Twitter. You don't have to address them as a group. But I feel like I do because I think it's more than just a select few that are feeling like Oli Marmol blew this game tonight by not bringing in Ryan Helsley. When clearly, right, he said right there, Helsley was down, Ryan Fernandez was down. Fernandez recorded 4 outs in the game on Tuesday. Obviously, they all had an off day on Monday, so you're thinking, okay, this isn't even a back-to-back, so that's disappointing. But he recorded 4 outs. Ryan Helsley pitched the 9th inning in that game on Tuesday. I believe he was somewhere around 17 pitches. I'd have to go back and look and see. But he was unavailable for tonight as well. That was according to Oli right there after the game. You heard the quote. I played the audio. It shouldn't be more complicated than that. And we can talk about frustrations over guys not being available enough when you feel like they ought to be. Yeah, Helsley threw 17 pitches last night. Romero, Fernandez, 1 1/3 innings. That is what I thought last night. Only 13 pitches, so he was very efficient. And so I can understand maybe some disappointment with the notion that neither of those guys were available. And I do believe either of them would have given the Cardinals a better chance to win going into the 10th than Andrew Kittredge, because Kittredge has not performed as effectively recently. Of course, Kittredge was not on the mound when the 2 base hits that sank the Cardinals were delivered. Oli Marmol saying they took some good swings on JoJo. He would go on to say in his postgame he hadn't really gotten to look too closely at those moments just yet because he was just fresh into the office after the game as of the media coming in to have a conversation with him. But seemed as though they took some good swings, and they did. Reynolds tagged one to center field for a base knock. O'Neal Cruz hitting his to right field. I saw some commentary about Oli Marmol bringing in Dylan Carlson as a pinch hitter for Ciani, and if Ciani had still been in the game, as I sort of tongue-in-cheek tweeted out to begin the 10th inning, boy, you really wish Ciani was on second base right now instead of Carlson, but Carlson was able to end up scoring on the Alec Burleson sacrifice anyway, so it didn't matter that much. I don't know that Ciani would have been able to do anything about the runner coming home on that base hit to center that Carlson kind of sailed the throw a little bit, and it was a little bit delayed. I don't know that Ciani would have been able to do anything differently there, so I'm not going to go too crazy thinking about that particular moment. What I really do want to harp on, though, is, do people not understand by now that the decision when Ryan Helsley is deemed unavailable after a game, it comes from a conversation that happens between Helsley and the Cardinal manager, Oli Marmol, where Helsley says, hey, can't go today. It would be a good day for me to not pitch. Good day for me to have off. Those are conversations that happen all the time between Oli Marmol and every guy in that bullpen on a daily basis. The guys come in, they might throw on the field before the game, stretch the arm out, get it going, can then determine, yeah, today's a day where I'm a little stiff, maybe wouldn't be a good day to go to me, or, yes, I've got an inning in me. Sometimes I've got a batter in me. If you can find a way, 2 outs in an inning, lefty-lefty matchup, yeah, I'm your man. And I'll get my guy, and we don't have to worry about extending. Obviously, 3-batter minimum changes that factor a little bit compared to what managers and players used to be able to dictate on those matters. But that's sort of the idea for the way that this goes. There are conversations that take place, right? It's not that Oli Marmol is going, nope, I got to protect Ryan Helsley. I'm just deciding he's not available. I got to protect Ryan Fernandez. I'm just deciding he's not available. I want to do it differently. Look, you would have loved to have had either of those guys for tonight because, again, I had said I thought he was pressing his luck with Kittredge in the 10th. But maybe that was part of the plan was, hey, if it gets beyond and Kittredge is not able to control the situation, we're going to go to JoJo because he's going to have the more favorable matchups against the switch hitter and then the lefty consecutively. So there was a plan there. I just didn't like the vibe of it because I know that Kittredge has struggled and it just felt like a press your luck moment. But if those other guys that would have been better options conceivably say they can't go, then they can't go. Is it recommended? Like, is what fans would want that Oli Marmol should pitch them against their will? Like, splinter a relationship with the player and the trust that they would have in their manager? Go ahead and put him into a situation when it was previously established for that day between player and manager that a guy was a no-go for a game? I just don't understand where some of y'all are living sometimes. I really don't. I don't know that it's anybody necessarily listening to this podcast. Maybe it is. Like I said, if I'm just getting Twitter brain on some of this, you can call me on it. But I think it's a little bit more deep-seated than just that. From just reading the sentiment of the number of people who share that thought process. Look, man, Helsley wasn't available tonight. You can decide if that's something you want to harp on and say Ryan Helsley should be more available for his team, given the Cardinals had an off day on Monday and he only threw 17 pitches in the game on Tuesday. Ryan Fernandez only threw 13 pitches in the game on Tuesday. But I also understand these guys being no-go on occasion. Like, I'm not one of those out there every other night with pitchforks saying Oli is overworking his bullpen this year. But if you're one of those people, you've kind of got to shut your mouth right now, right? Just take your medicine on a night like tonight. Helsley, Kittredge, and JoJo are among the top 20 relievers in appearances in MLB this year, which I'm genuinely cool with. You haven't heard me harp a ton on that because I'm okay with it. I don't really have an issue with it. Look, my perspective, these guys are being paid to pitch. They're in the bullpen to pitch. That's why they're getting paid. That's their profession. And when it comes to other workload type of measurements like innings, they're not in as bad of shape. Total pitches thrown, not top 20 in those categories. But for all the whining I hear about how guys are overworked in the pen, there's absolutely no way people are seriously bitching at Oli for listening to the players when they say they can't go on a certain day. Especially when those same people continue to warn about the overuse of relievers. Now, one thing I'm completely okay with folks doing is acknowledging how we got to a situation where, say, a guy like Helsley is unavailable in the first place in this second game of the series is because he pitched in the first game of the series after the Cardinals had a 6-0 lead. Those are the types of things that you maybe think about sparingly in the moment. Maybe it occurs to you in passing, but it's kind of hard to be too upset about it on a day the Cardinals still win the game, but that cost them tonight. The fact that they ended up taking a 6-0 lead and ended up having a 7-4 lead by the time the ninth inning rolled around, and that is cookie cutter, bring in your closer moment. And you might say, well, they could have allowed somebody else to take that spot so that tonight they could have gone to Helsley in a 1-run lead. I get it. It's easy to say in hindsight. But last night, you get the win while you can get the win. If they had brought in Kittredge in the game on Tuesday and he had pitched poorly, kind of like he did tonight, or JoJo pitched poorly, kind of like he did tonight, and they lose that game on Tuesday, something tells me that nobody would be here going, oh, it's okay. They needed to save Ryan Helsley for a more meaningful spot that was a 1-run game instead of a 3-run game. No, you'd be saying, how in the world could Oli Marmol not have his closer into that game after an off day? So those are things that are reasonable to keep in mind and to acknowledge, to say, hey, they actually might have lost this game and it might have been because of this, that, or the other, but there's another reason for it. Why a guy like Helsley wouldn't be available is because the rest of the team did not make sure that the 6-0 lead ended up in a game that the Cardinals won without needing their closer. Nope, they ended up getting close enough that they needed him, and those sorts of things, that carry-down effect absolutely matters. If you want to say, no, my issue is with Miles Mikolas, he could have gone further than 6 innings, 87 pitches, and that's where Oli Marmol should be blamed, then okay, I could see that argument, and it is fair. Like, you got to acknowledge, though, you can't burn the candle at both ends. That part's fair. You can't have the relief base bear the heavier load, but then also say, well, the starters have got to be guarded very carefully. You can do that, but it's going to end up in the result that ends with relievers getting more taxed and more worn down as the season goes along. Although I actually do prefer, if I had to choose between burning out the starters and burning out the relievers, I'd rather burn out the relievers because relievers matter less. They're fickle anyway. They're probably going to wear down as it is. You could be ultra careful with them, and sometimes in some given seasons, you still may not get the results you're looking for. But I'll agree, it's not ideal to willingly enter into a scenario where logically, if you're going to think about it with logic, you're admitting that you will be burning up your bullpen if those guys are going to lead the league in appearances while you're going to take your starters, and when there might be a scenario to stretch a guy beyond the mid-80s in pitch count, get one more inning out of him, squeeze it out of him, get him close to 100, and they generally refuse to do that at every turn, well, you are going to end up with some situations like this where guys aren't available on a given night, and you got to make do with what you have. That being said, let's be earnest here. Let's be genuine. Miles Mikolas gave up 10 runs the last time he pitched. 10! So I'm okay with not exposing him any extra late into a game with his proclivities on what happens when he makes a mistake as he wears down a little bit. It gets hit a long way. So I'm all right with that. But let's go ahead and get to the heart of it. Because for as much as people are saying DFA JoJo, it's a joke. If you're saying DFA JoJo Romero, seek help. Just seek help. He's got an ERA at 2.6, and I get it. He didn't give up the earned runs today, but I wouldn't say he had a good game. No, he gave up 2 hits and didn't record any outs. Didn't do his job. But if you look at his recent numbers, he had like 4 appearances in a row without giving up an earned run. Occasionally, he's giving up inherited runners, and those guys are coming around to score. But if you look between the 26th of June and the 2nd of July, that's 4 appearances by JoJo, he had allowed 0 hits, 0 runs, and just 1 total walk. All right? So it's not like he's been getting murdered in recent games. And in fact, the Cardinals had won all of those games in which Romero appeared. He got holds in each of them. It's fair to acknowledge he hasn't been as good in terms of swing and miss. I don't think Andrew Kittredge has been as consistent and as, frankly, dominant as he was earlier in the season when we coined the term the triumvirate, and we saw those 3 relievers, Kittredge, JoJo, and Helsley, be unstoppable. But I'm not entirely sure that you had obvious answers to throw into those scenarios tonight instead. The thing that could have happened is maybe putting guys into different spots at different times to try and maximize what you had. But as it was, Matthew Liberatore came into a situation rescuing Giovanny Gallegos. So maybe you would have preferred Liberatore come in before Gallegos. Again, I should feel inclined to point out that those guys are generally going to come in for different scenarios. They're going to come in with Gallegos in a spot in the lineup that features more righties typically, and with Libby, it's going to be a lefty-heavy portion of the lineup. That's at least the way you're trying to draw it up. Now, for Libby to be successful as maybe a multi-inning reliever, or certainly if he ever goes back to being in a starter role, he's going to have to be comfortable against both righties and lefties, which he was comfortable against righties when he had that start against the Atlanta Braves. I think 0 for 14 is what righties went against him. So I could understand if you would say, look, this was a one-run game, at the point at which Mikolas left the game after 87 pitches and Gallegos came in. Gallegos should not be the answer in a one-run game. regardless of whether you're winning it, whether you're losing it. I will agree with that. But you know who probably would have been a pretty good answer for that situation, down one? Maybe Chris Roycroft. Maybe Kyle Leahy. Are you sensing a theme here? It's not Oli Marmol's fault that Giovanny Gallegos is on this team. And if Giovanny Gallegos is going to be on this team, the role that he needs to fulfill is there's got to be some level of confidence that you can bring him into a game down one and he can keep it there. So let's get to the heart of it. Gallegos, should he be on the team? Fair to ask. It's a one-run game. He gives up a bomb. And the location on that pitch, my friends, could not have been more middle if he had placed it there on a batting tee. It was middle, just as middle can get. Not a great location. Was interesting. I mean, Tellez hit it the other way. So I guess had a little zip on the pitch. He was behind on the swing, clearly. Left-handed batter hitting it out to left. But, I mean, the location was just brutal. And then he walks Nick Gonzalez, Brian Hayes with a base hit. Did end up striking out Joey Bart, but that was all she wrote for Gio. I get it. If that's where you're frustrated, man, I am not going to argue with you. But I have said since before the Cardinals brought Gio back that they might be mishandling this situation. Prepare for them to mishandle this situation. Because if this guy hadn't given the Cardinals 5 or 6 good seasons and had put in the time and had been such an integrated part of the organization, I think if you took a guy with his numbers on that rehab assignment, that guy probably gets DFA'd before ever returning to the big leagues. But when that guy is a staple or has been a staple of the bullpen in years past, you know, you have a harder time maybe making that business decision, but Oli Marmol doesn't decide who gets DFA'd. All right? And I'm not even going to write John Mozeliak too terribly hard on it because I understand that sometimes for as much as we wanted to just, hey, go be cutthroat, just go do the business move that needs to be done, there is the element of, you know, having some respect for a player, doing right by a player that has meant something to the organization. And I get it. People are so down on Gallegos. Nobody in the commentary is probably going to admit, down in the comments section, that Gio had some really good years with the Cardinals, and they'd be doing him a little bit dirty if they put him out on the street straight out of a rehab assignment. However, we've seen it. Have you seen enough? Have we seen it? And we go, you know what? Would Chris Roycroft be a better option? You know, would Kyle Leahy, who deserves to be here on this roster right now, be a better option for that spot down one? Again, those are two righties, so like for like, if you're talking about not needing to be a righty in that situation, okay, I think I would take either of those guys. Adam Kloffenstein, maybe even Gordon Graceffo. Like, if you can name 4 or 5 guys that you think maybe you'd trust more to come into that role, and those 4 or 5 guys are in Memphis right now, I mean, there's really not a whole lot left to say at that point. You got to, like, what is Gio's role if it's not that? If he cannot hold the game close there, what's the role? Liberatore was tremendous with the bailout. He got 5 outs for the Cardinals tonight. He's been so good. There might not be a player with a bigger discrepancy between the way that fans feel about him sometimes and the quality of the performance as it is with Matthew Liberatore, because his guy has gotten ripped every which way to Sunday. But when you go out and look at what he's doing, he's given the Cardinals quality. 3.72 ERA now for the season. He's been shoved into a variety of roles. He's answered the bell. Libby tonight records 5 outs, allows 1 hit, no walks, no runs. Pretty good stuff there by Matthew Liberatore. It obviously wasn't enough tonight for the Cardinals. And if it's Gio that you're feeling angsty about, let that angst flow. I can understand that. I'm not going to say that, well, John Mozeliak needs to be fired because he didn't do what needed to be done with Gio first things first. You know, I get it. Sometimes you take a shot, it doesn't work out. You can even predict that it might not work out, but sometimes your hands are tied a little bit. I'm not saying Mozeliak's hands were tied on this Gio thing. They could have made a harsh business decision. But you also think about what about the next time you sign a free agent reliever, you put a guy into the situation, Does the next guy coming through want to play for the Cardinals if that's how they treat their veterans? I get that may not matter to a lot of people. I think that there is an element of this that plays into that. With a guy like Gallegos, who has been around as long as Gallegos has been with this organization, but I just don't think he has it anymore. And if I can confidently say I've got 4 guys in Memphis that I think could fill the role better right now, what left is there to say? Let me know if you've got anything to say on that topic in the comments below. Understand if people are pissed at me tonight. That's okay. I got to call it like I see it, though. I just think this notion that every time the bullpen blows a game is because Oli Marmol did something wrong. Look, be frustrated. But if Helsley and Fernandez weren't available, and those would have been the 2 guys I would have preferred for the 10th inning, if those guys weren't available, then they're not available. And if you're pissed that Oli Marmol continues to run out Kittredge and JoJo in meaningful scenarios when right now they're performing more like middle relief types rather than leverage and setup guys, I get that can be a frustrating aspect of it too, but I also think that those are the guys that are on the team. That's their role. Liberatore, if you want to elevate him into more of a high-profile setup role and take some of those spots away from JoJo, okay. John King, if you want some of those, I feel like they've done that at times. John King has been utilized in 7th inning, different situations. I don't know as far as whether he was to be considered available tonight after pitching in the game yesterday or Tuesday at this point. Only recorded a couple of outs Tuesday, but he was brought into that game in the 6th inning. Only threw 7 pitches, so I figure he would have been available. Maybe you go to him instead of JoJo. Maybe it's a similar result, right? We've seen John King come into that almost identical spot, gave up the home run against the Dodgers in that first series. That was a long time ago, but it was this season. So we're just trying to cover all the angles here. There are ways to maneuver it. I'm not going to say that you won't be able to comment with, here's how I would have done it, and I might agree with you even. Throw your comment out there. We'll talk about it. I just don't prefer to say, well, it's the manager's fault because the players that he put into place, he was hamstrung a little bit by the state of the roster anyway with guys who were unavailable, the 2 guys that I would have preferred to be in there. And at the time, I didn't know either that they were available or not available. But I waited for the postgame. I listened to what Oli Marmol said after the fact, and I go, oh, okay, they weren't available. It sucks. There's frustration behind that for sure. But again, you can't then turn around and say, well, they've all thrown 40 appearances already this season. They're overworking them to death. But Helsley should have been available tonight because they needed this game. Can't have it both ways. So what does that mean? It means we don't let John Mozeliak off the hook for going out and getting relief help ahead of the trade deadline. It means if a Chris Roycroft has a better arm right now and gives you a better chance, in your opinion, than Giovanny Gallegos, then you make that move and you make it yesterday. These are the things that are going to be needed because you can afford to give away games rarely throughout a season. It's going to happen. Every team's going to have games like this one. But when it happens, what do you learn from it? And do you continue to put yourself in the sort of passive position? Are you going to stay in the passenger seat when there does seem to be some issues with the bullpen that you might actually be able to resolve with internal options before even needing to go out into the open trade market? For me, that's kind of where the Cardinals are right now with the Gio thing. We'll see what they end up doing. Maybe they make a move, maybe they don't. I think it is probably time to very strongly consider whether or not Gio, in the role that he served tonight, is more trusted and you feel more confident in him than you would a Leahy or you would a Roycroft or even an Adam Kloffenstein in the same scenario. I think it's an important question that the Cardinals front office and coaching staff needs to be deliberating on and coming to a decision on at this point. It's disappointing. Nobody wanted to see coming into the year Giovanny Gallegos kind of fall from grace the way that he has, but the ERA is 9.75. He recorded an out tonight, gave up multiple hits and a walk, one of which on the hit count was a home run. I just don't think if that's going to be his role, and you can't reserve him for just mop-up duty because there's not a lot of value to that role in a bullpen. And he also hasn't been a guy historically that throws 2-3 inning outings necessarily, so I just don't think it's a fit for his skill set. His skill set is leverage relief to be one of the setup men, the righties that can be relied upon when games are close. And this one was close, and ultimately they got through it because the Wilson homer made it a tie game and they were able to extend to extras. But there's a way in which the Cardinals maybe don't need to go to extras tonight, if not for Gio in the situation that he put the Cardinals into. So it's not that he's doing it on purpose either. I feel bad to be able to kind of feel like I have to rip the guy for the performance that he had tonight, but I think that's maybe the reality of where the Cardinals are right now. The Gio conversation, I think, is heating up, and probably rightfully so. And then we just have to realize beyond that, some nights there are going to be guys, Helsley, Fernandez, unavailable. When that happens, you just look at your bullpen. We're not talking very fondly about Gio. Kittredge and JoJo are going to be in the spots that they've been in, even if you have a lower degree of confidence that they'll be able to succeed in those spots. It's just the reality of the way this works. And then John King, Liberatore are two more relievers that you feel pretty decent about from the left side. Maybe that would be the argument you could make, but Liberatore had already pitched in this game. Would John King have come in to rescue the day in the spot that JoJo, did not in the 10th? Maybe. But I think it's hindsight a little bit to just say, we know for sure that a better choice would have been John King. We don't know for sure. So people are going to say, what a fraud. Brendan's back in Oli Marmol again. I just don't know if this is an Oli Marmol loss. I think the bullpen is a little bit more unreliable than it had been at points in the season, but that's especially going to be true when two of your top relievers are unavailable and your other two of your top four relievers aren't the same guys right now that they had been at previous points in the year. And look, you pull Miles Mikolas after 6 innings. I didn't have an issue with it. 87 pitches, didn't have an issue with it. We have seen him break down later in starts. I just am not going to get too up in arms about that after the guy gave up 10 runs last week. Right? So you can look at the bullpen. You can look at the way that was managed if you want to. I'm more inclined to look at it and just say it's just a sign of the times of where they are. Bullpen's not quite as elite as it was at one point or another. And to me, depth is going to be the most important thing there. So continuing to pursue possible upgrades would behoove the Cardinals. The other way they lose this game is offensively. 2 for 10 with RISP. They left 8 on base for the game. Bottom of the order was pretty much non-existent. If you get beyond the top 4 tonight, Donovan was the 5-hole batter, and he's been pretty good recently, but he goes over with just a walk. Arenado over. Brandon Crawford had 1 hit. It was a double to right. Good speed to leg out the double, by the way, and he ended up coming around to score. But a couple of strikeouts. Gorman back to the doldrums, 0 for 4, 3 Ks. Ciani 0 for 3 with 2 Ks. So the second half of the lineup was just completely dormant tonight. Top 4 did a pretty solid job. Mason Wynn, 3 for 5 with an RBI. Burleson, 1 for 3 with a run scored and an RBI. Contreras, obviously, with the 2-run homer, also reached base via walk a couple of times. And Goldie went 2 for 5, although he did strike out a couple of times. But continuing to get some multi-hit games and maybe get that batting average up a little bit. It's at 230. Nothing crazy. You got batting averages like 179, 189, 224, littering the bottom portion of your lineup. Cardinals aren't a big batting average team, but they also haven't produced a ton of power. Struck out 12 times tonight. Figured they'd probably have some trouble with Jared Jones. And he pitched fine. 5 innings, 1 run. Struck out 5. I probably would have pegged him for more than 5 strikeouts. They had trouble with the relief corps outside of Holderman, who gave up the home run to Contreras. But this is a Pirates bullpen that's not very good. Chapman, I think it was probably the right decision to let Chapman in there to pitch the 10th after he pitched a scoreless 9th. He did give up the Manfred man, but otherwise was nasty. He was up to 103 tonight, so Chapman has always handled the Cardinals pretty well. It hasn't really mattered who was on the roster at the time. That always has seemingly been the case for Aroldis Chapman. And there was one pitch, I think it was to Donovan, I believe. It was either Donovan or Crawford. It was somebody with a 3 on their jersey and long hair. So you probably know. I'm not going to go back and look it up because it's almost 2 a.m. But I think Pitching Ninja had it. 103 up and in. That's pretty nasty. So sometimes you're going to get beat by that type of stuff, but it's a tough one for the Cardinals to take, and can they bounce back at 11:35 a.m. on the 4th of July to get the series win? If they do that, the angst over this game tonight, I think, is decreased just a little bit. The matchup of Palante against Martin Perez, I think that probably benefits the Cardinals, benefits Palante, but they need to see the offense carry this one. Carry the Cardinals off into the sunset on a series win here should be what the offense is able to produce in the game on Thursday. It's really all I have to say about tonight. Let me know. Again, I'm always going to try to be equal opportunity. I came after some fans tonight because I just think the narratives are lazy, quite frankly, when there's information out there and you can be upset about a certain thing, but understand why you're upset about it. All right, if a guy's unavailable, just saying that Oli Marmol is clueless doesn't pay attention to what's actually going on behind the scenes and how these things come to fruition. I wouldn't personally put it out there and say, well, that means that Ryan Helsley is unreliable and he just doesn't ever want to pitch when the team needs him. I don't think that's a take that I would agree with. Guys got more saves than anybody in baseball by far in his top 20 in appearances. I think he's appeared in 40 games now. Right? So I'm not going to go and say, well, Ryan Helsley's not there for his team. No, I think in the role that he's in, he's doing it. He's not going to be able to pitch 120 games a year. He's not going to pitch 90 games a year. He's on pace to pitch about 80 games a year, and sometimes when you're on that kind of pace, to make sure it doesn't creep up even higher, there are games you're not going to pitch. I get it that it's a little bit of a puzzler coming off of an off day Monday, but they also look at total pitches in the last 5 days, last week, last couple weeks, and they try to parse all of that out and make sure that they're protecting these guys. And feedback from the players themselves is going to come into play as well. So that's my thoughts on the game. If I'm a dummy, tell me I'm a dummy. I'm promising you I can handle that. Let's do this, though, before we get out of here. Really quickly, we want to make sure to go down on the farm. It's time to go down on the farm. As we go down on the farm, we'll start with the Springfield Cardinals tonight because we want to continue to update you on how things are going for Cardinals outfielder Lars Nootbaar as he continues his rehab assignment with the Double-A club. He was 0 for tonight, 0 for 3. However, he did reach base twice via walk and also drove in a run. He's got a 789 OPS down there with Double-A at this point. And the Springfield Cardinals got the 6-3 win over Northwest Arkansas. It actually came on a 4-run ninth as the Cardinals come from behind to get that victory. We're going to say the name Matt Swanson again because he had a couple of innings of scoreless relief to end up getting the win there for the Springfield Cardinals, 6-3. And then in AAA, it was another extra inning game in the Cardinals organization. They lose this one in the same way that they lost the big league one. 4-3 in 11, the Cardinals fall, or the Redbirds, I should say, in Memphis fall. It was a bit of a bullpen game. Connor Thomas had the start, only 2 2/3 innings. Roy Croft, we know that name, recorded an out later on, and Ryan Ludus ended up with an inning pitched, but gave up the unearned run to lose this one. That's another name that I should probably mention would probably be in consideration for being more effective than Gallegos in the current big league role that he's in, but I digress. On the offensive side, JC had a couple of hits. Luke and Baker, 1 for 5 with a ribby. Matt Koperniak continues to stay hot. He was on base 4 times, going 2 for 3 with a run scored, as well as a couple of walks. He's got a 325 average, and that OPS is now up at 900. And how about Jordan Walker as well? On base 3 times. He went 2 for 4 with an RBI, had a double in the game, also walked. Pretty good to see there. The OPS up above 700 for Jay Walk down at AAA, and Victor Scott still leading things off for the Memphis Redbirds. He was 1 for 4 with a run scored, also reaching base via walk. So not a game that the Redbirds were too happy about the result with, but 10 hits means some success throughout that lineup. They just needed to see some more runs scored tonight, and they were not able to get that done. So that's down on the farm. That's going to do it for this podcast. Let me know your thoughts. Get them in quick because I'll try to address the things that need to be addressed from that, and then we'll get off and rolling with a Cardinal game at 11:35 a.m. on Thursday for your 4th of July viewing habits. I know it's going to be disappointing that you're not going to be able to watch Joey Chestnut in the Big Nathan's hot dog eating contest this year. I know I'm kind of pissed about it. But that is a story for another day. Need some traditions for this 4th of July after tonight. The fireworks we went to did not go too well for my son. He's a little too new to this, I think, for the fireworks and the noise and the lights of it all. So we had to kind of bow out of that. But I'll hope to get to see some fireworks tomorrow night since I didn't really get to enjoy them tonight. And hopefully my son goes down for his bedtime in a way that maybe gets him a little bit more rested and recuperated after the crazy night tonight. But anyway, hope you guys enjoyed at least watching some Cardinals baseball, listening to this podcast, and are going to have a great, safe, healthy, happy holiday weekend. I will be going to the farm later on this weekend, and you all recall the last time that I was there, the audio recording for the podcast was a little bit spicy, not quite what we're normally used to. However, still do plan to bring my laptop, bring everything to continue podcasting throughout the weekend. But enjoy your guys' holiday. Make sure everybody's safe. Let me know in the comments what you guys are doing for the 4th, and we'll talk to you soon. That is going to do it for this edition of the show. I've rambled on long enough. We'll talk to you next time on Be Safe Daily. Peace.